Good evening. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. I'll be tonight's host. With us tonight we have Judy Fuozo and Patricia Singer. Judy is a licensed massage therapist amongst her many skills. Patricia is a acupuncturist amongst her many skills. We're going to talk about Eastern medicine, how it relates to Western medicine, a little bit of background, and just a fun conversation. So first of all, either one of you first, tell our audience what you do, what your background is, who you are, where you came from, how you got to where you are now. Who's going first?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, this is probably my third or fourth career, I would say. I trained massage therapy at the Swedish Institute Manhattan. I've been doing energy work for 20 plus years. Was doing it before. I actually went to massage school because when I would be working with people with energy work with Reiki, I'd be able to say, well, there's something not quite right here or there, but I didn't know enough about anatomy to really say, okay, this is what's going on here, and all that entails, like this organ's not working right and what that means. And when I went to school, I really fell in love with massage. So I really blended my love for energy work with massage, and it's so important to know the anatomy, to have more than just, it gives you another level when you're working with someone, even with just energy work, it's more tools in your toolbox.
That's one of the things I'm going to ask you about, because I didn't understand how in-depth your knowledge of anatomy compares to that of a medical doctor, for instance. But first of all, Patricia, tell us who you are, where you came from, and how you got where you are now.
Well, my road started over 30 years ago. Actually, it'll be 30 years January 9th that I started studying shiatsu, which is acupressure massage. And then from there I wanted to know more, just like you, with the anatomy, so I went to the Connecticut Center for Massage Therapy and became a massage therapist. And then the road I studied healing with Barbara Brennan, and I went on to study Native American studies, and then continued on until finally I landed into acupuncture school, and I also went to the Swedish Institute and studied classical acupuncture.
Where did your roads converge?
What do you mean?
The two of you.
Oh,
how did you get to know one another?
Actually, years ago when I became a massage therapist, I got a job at the Brookfield Chiropractic Center in Brookfield. And I worked there for 10 years, and then once I became a licensed acupuncturist, I went back there, and that's where I met Judy, because she also works there.
Yeah, it was
a small world.
Dr. Parvati?
No, Bailey, Dr. Bailey.
Dr. Bailey.
Okay. Okay. Now, you talked about the human anatomy. How does your knowledge of human anatomy compare? If I were thinking about going to a traditional medical doctor or going to an alternative medical arrangement, how would I find out who knows what about anatomy? Because it seems anatomy is pretty important to any kind of healing.
Well, in terms of massage, we're more surface anatomy, so it's muscles and bones and movement. I think whereas with a doctor, he does more internal, it's more organ-based. In acupuncture, we don't look at them in the same way. So you might say I have a liver, but it's a liver meridian, so it's an energy of the liver. So you might say something's going on with your liver, but it has a mental, physical, emotional, spiritual level. So you could look at liver is kind of the commander-in-chief, and its direction, and its decision-making, the emotion of anger or depression, so anger turned inward becomes depression. It's visionary, so it's a wider scope, so it's somebody who has a type A personality or somebody who is having a lot of trouble making decisions. You'd say something's off with their liver, whereas a medical doctor would look at the enzymes, it would look at the physical liver in terms of what's happening. So that's where the Eastern and Western really don't meet.
Now I'm going to give a little shout out to a medical doctor whom we mentioned in our discussion prior to coming on stage, and that's Ted Blum in Bethel, whom I've had as my doctor probably the better part of the last 30 years. I've been to he and also David, Dr. David Shapiro also, who's also a pretty good doctor. So I've kind of sidled back and forth between the two of them. But you had mentioned Ted Blum as being a good old-style family doctor that is very not loath to prescribing medications, but very sensible about his delving into prescription medications. And I wanted to give a shout out to Ted. But also another thing that really caught my ear when we were out discussing was somehow or other Mao Zedong came into the discussion. And knowing that Mao, who began the Cultural Revolution in China, I had no idea that he ever looked at medicine, although I imagine a leader of any country is probably going to be concerned about the health and well-being of the citizens of that country. But tell us about that. Tell us about what Mao's idea was.
Well, during that time in the 50s, what he did was he wanted to condense acupuncture. There was a really big movement away from the classics. And so he gathered the big clans of acupuncture and he sat them around the table and he said, you go through all of what you do and tell us what's the same about what you do. So that, my analogy would be gathering Kung Fu, Karate, Tai Chi, Wushu group masters together saying what's the same. So what it does is it diffused it and it condensed it, and so that it could be more manageable. So it's very cookbook. So it's based on the Western model, which says a diagnosis, treatment principle, and then points and what you're trying to get. So it's basically cookbook. So if somebody has a rotator cuff issue, they would do blah, blah, blah points, then they would just... And so it works, but it takes away a lot of the essence and a lot of the history and a lot of the poetry in terms of how we use it. So it takes away the levels of blood and the emotion, it condenses it so that it's more refined, but not as rich and not as broad as the classics were.
No, I don't know if this makes sense, but when we were talking about that beforehand, about Mao Zedong, I thought to myself, maybe Mao was the HMO of his day, and that HMO has become very hands-on in telling doctors what they can, what they can't do, what they can prescribe, what they can't prescribe for each individual patient, rather than that doctor-patient relationship being a more intimate one than it used to be. And we think about doctors making house calls and doctors actually spending time, hands-on time with their patients. And we've gotten away with that with HMOs. It sounds like what Mao was doing was, and we know, like many dictators, Mao Zedong was very top-down, very micromanaged everything in China, including the death of quite a few million people. But it sounds like he was kind of...
He did it because in those the hospitals in China, the doctors become doctors and also acupuncturists and mostly herbalists. So they condensed it more into herbs. So someone would go into the hospital and be treated in large clinics, and they would just lie on a bed. The needles would be thrown in, and they would then have a prescription where they would go and get their herbs. So it's more based on heat and cold, exterior, interior. There's the 8 principles. So yin and yang, and so it gets very... it's more treatable because you can have 20 people or 100 people in a room and just work on them.
Do a very generic prescription or a series of applications for all of them, and presumably it would work with most of them at least. And so they got away from like the tongue and pulse diagnosis, so it wasn't as sharp and as individual. Because the difference, I think, between Western and Eastern also is, in Western you can have 5 people with migraines and they're treated the same, whereas in the Eastern, 5 people might come and see me for a migraine and I'll treat them 5 different ways, because it's more catered to the individual, just like the work that you do, the work that I do as a healer. We're really working from the individual and looking at, well, what's being affected, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional.
All the little information,
the nuances
that you get when you talk to someone before you treat them, and just also what you pick up intuitively, what maybe they're not saying, but you're getting that information without them saying it, and kind of pulling that picture together. And when you start to work with someone, you actually start to, do hands-on or just work in somebody's energy field, you're getting a steady stream of information. Lots of times somebody will come in and say, my neck is really bothering me. And I may not work on their neck because I'll get information from their body that what's really going on is I need to work in this area, maybe I need to work on their feet, maybe I need to work on their ribs. And that's information that's coming directly from the source, directly from the person's body to me. There's a dialogue that goes on that's really unspoken. Where
So you're listening
to the body.
to the body.
And the body knows exactly what it needs. It knows exactly what's...
Almost like a more broad spectrum. Now, you mentioned intuitive and you mentioned hands-on. And I don't hear anything in traditional, in Western medicine, that sounds anything like, to me, like intuitive and hands-on.
Not really, though. You know, when you talked about family doctors, they were very intuitive because they were almost Eastern. Like a family doctor looked at everything. Like, for instance, my family doctor, when I grew up, he delivered my mom.
Yeah.
He took care of her all through, you know, when she was in her teens, and then when she got married, he delivered all of us. I mean, he had all of our family history. So he was looking at it. It may not have been called Eastern, but it was really an Eastern outlook because he had the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, what went on like when my mom grew up, what her family environment was like, you know, what her home life was when she was married with kids. So he was going into a large amount of information that he could draw from that maybe he wasn't even consciously saying it, but it was just all that he knew because he had known our family for so long. And he was, I mean, I think I've never really thought about it, but family doctors really were very much Eastern because they looked at everything. Like what stressors are going on in your life? You know, you just recently got a divorce or you recently got that, and they're taking all that into consideration, which is what you do in Eastern medicine.
So
you look at everything.
Rather than looking at a chart for a minute, he was the chart. He had been there.
Yeah.
He had seen all of these things firsthand through at least 2 generations of families. That's
Yeah, and then
that's
also you're
fascinating.
looking at, Western medicine tends to look at the effect, and what about the cause? It's like, where's the root? It's like the root and the branch. It's like, so why do you have a neck issue? So when you're working on someone, you're looking at, well, their neck is bothering them, but where is it coming from? Is it coming from their sacrum? Is it coming from some digestive issue or whatever? There's so many different linkages. That's just the effect. That's just where it's ending up.
Yeah, very rarely is the pain where the problem is. Unless it's a direct trauma, like you had a car accident, you got hit or you got struck. Very rarely is the pain where the problem. It just travels and it goes to the weakest area, and that's where the pain is. I mean, lots of times people will come in and say, well, you know, my right hip is really, really bothering me. And it'll turn out that, yes, the right hip is weak and there's pain there, but the left side is really where the issue is, because that's the side that's tight, because that's the side that's been working very hard. When this right side, whatever happened that it's weaker, the body automatically says, okay, this side's not working that well, I'm just going to engage these muscles, I'm going to pick up the slack. So now you have one side working harder, it's working for 2. And what happens is, as time goes on, it keeps working and working and working, and eventually, because the working is it's contracting, it's contracting, it's contracting, it eventually stays in a contracted state. So now you have the original side that was weaker and you were having issues with, and now you have a side that's permanently contracted, so now it's yanking. So you're getting a lot more pain in that side, but it's really coming from the other side.
So in layman's terms, it's I've heard about a person having a problem, say, with their left leg, and because of that they favor the left leg, they take it easy on the left leg, put extra stress on the right leg, and the problem shows up in the right leg when it's really the left leg that's the root of the problem. Is that a layman's explanation of your very lovely detailed explanation?
Yeah, it's we compensate, you know, we baby aside, but the body automatically does it. The body automatically says, okay, we're going to engage this and do that, so you can still sit, stand, walk, do all the things you normally do. So the body's doing it automatically, and then we do whatever we do where we know the side's injured. So, you know, I'm going to like put more weight on the other side. And then, of course, underneath that issue that develops because you have all this compensation is, why was that side weak in the first place? So you have almost 2 issues. You have the original issue of why this side was weak, and then you have the issue that came from long-term of you babying it and the body compensating. So you have 2 issues. So when somebody comes in, you have actually two different things you're looking at. You have the pain here, which is coming from all the compensation, these muscles being really tight, and then you have beyond that the original of why was the side weak. So you're looking at a lot of different things, and most people when they come in, they usually wait until they're in quite a bit of pain, to where they can't get out of bed in the morning, or they bend over, they can't get up, or they can't turn their head when they're driving.
That's just the end result of a lot of back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, so you're kind of unraveling. You're all the way down here, and you have to kind of put little pieces together and open this up and adjust this, so you can eventually get to here, which is what caused the original problem. Why was that side weak?
Now, when you say adjust, I'm thinking about chiropractic, and I know just a little bit about, and just enough to know that chiropractors see the spine as the center of the universe, so to speak, and everything kind of emanates out.
Oh, it pretty much is.
From the spine. From the spine. Is that the same approach that acupuncturists and massage therapists take? Do you work outward from the spine in order to find the problem?
Not so much. In
Not
acupuncture,
really.
you're really looking, you're finding what organ, when you're doing the pulses, like what's the most tight. You're looking at who's in charge at the moment, who's overworking and who's underworking. It's kind of like you're looking at the body more like a hose, and if the hose is nice and flat out and you put water in it, it just flows.
Yeah.
But with illness or imbalance or dis-ease, that hose is askewed and it kinks, and so then you're looking, where do we unkink it and unwind it so that it can flow?
So you're seeing, rather than one center of the universe, so to speak, is the spine, you're seeing multiple centers of the universe being the organs.
We're looking more at organs, yeah.
Well, it's layers. Everything is layers. It's never really black and white, because we're physical, we're spiritual, we're emotional, we're so many different bodies, so to speak, and something that affects on one level affects on all of them. So you can't really isolate and say, I'm just going to look at the physical part, because that's not all that we are. And emotional things will manifest in the physical way. Energetic imbalance will manifest physically and emotionally. Usually, I tend to think that things manifest first on an energetic level. There's some type of imbalance there, and then it kind of works from there into the physical body and the emotional body.
So where Western medicine sounds a little bit more two-dimensional, where you find a spot and you deal with the spot. If you have a liver problem, you deal with the liver. If you have a heart problem, you deal with the heart. It sounds like the Eastern medicine we're talking about here is more three-dimensional.
Probably more than that.
Maybe even more.
No, the concept.
Well, we only have three dimensions, unless you consider time as being the fourth dimension.
Yeah, or the spirit.
Spirit being the fourth dimension.
It's like the poetry behind dis-ease in acupuncture would be, we're born, so we have our blueprint. This reason, our raison d'être, the reason why we've incarnated, and then we live our life and we're not following it. So the initial part would be, we'd get like something called a wind cold. Now the wind cold is fever and chills, and we're chilled, and it's giving us the metaphor of we're frozen, we're not moving. And then in a cold, what happens, it comes through, and then we have wind heat, more heat or fevers than chills, and that's the body trying to say, come on, let's get going. You have a reason here, let's move.
So one's a reaction to the other.
To the other, because it's trying to get you to move.
That's why you get a fever when you actually have a cold?
Yeah, so the first signs would be drippy nose. That's a wind cold. Thin, and then it moves into thicker mucus that's more bacterial, and that's more the heat coming in to say, come on, what is it that you're doing here? You're taking a break, now let's get going. And then when you really don't want to shift, then you have one-sided symptoms. And it's like, I don't know which way to turn. Should I go this way? Should I go that way? I'm confused. And you're confused because you really know what you need to do, but you don't have the energy or the commitment or courage to move ahead. And so then it goes deeper into the body. So then you get into deeper illnesses. Like you could eventually move to cancer, which is just phlegm, which is dampness, which is I can't make a decision, that goes to the constitutional level, and then the body starts to break down, because it's almost like the body's saying, well, if you're not doing what you're meant to do here, then let's give you an exit clause or a reason to look at your life and see if you want to exit or if you really want to stay, which means you have to change. Because any illness is like you can have cancer and cut out the cancer, but you still have cancer if you haven't changed your life, because it's the habituation, the patterns that we create that have created it on some level. So when you're working with alternative healing, I think you're looking at many, many layers, and you're helping the person just get back on track and say, why are you here? Okay, your marriage is falling apart. You're desperately unhappy. Why are you staying? You know, maybe you need to shift out and move and claim yourself. Maybe that's what your body's really telling you to do. So it's kind of looking at symbolism, I think. I think in Eastern medicine, you're really talking about metaphors. And it's the body has a language of its own, but we don't understand it. So the body's language is pain. Ow, this hurts. So it's like, well, why does this hurt? What's happened in your life to cause this pain, And where do you want to go? What are you reaching for? It's like, it's a very, if we look at it and can begin to understand what our language is, then we can begin to heal. Because you're making different choices, you're starting different patterns. So if you're wanting to lose weight and you're still eating hot fudge sundaes and milkshakes, you're not going to. So then it's like taking that and saying, okay, so if I stop this and claim myself, then maybe my body can begin to change.
Taking control of one's life.
Right. Through choice. Through choice.
And that's all very internal. That's very, you know, so much people tend to look outside for answers. If I have this, if I do that, if I look this way, if I live this place, and none of the answers are out there. All the answers are inside. All the information you're ever going to need is inside your body.
Tell me how to be well. Tell me how to be well, and your response would be, you need to figure out how to be well.
Or listen to yourself.
Well, just to create a still place, which is what meditation, yoga, tai chi, and any number of different things that people do, all that really is so that you can get into an internal still place inside, so that you can hear your body. If you cannot hear your body, you have no idea what's going on with it. If it's all coming from your head, then that really has nothing to do with your body. You know, you can't, because the mind is so much a louder voice, so to say, than the body. The body has a voice, but I find that it's steady but relatively quiet to all the other voices that yell in our head during a day, the things we should do, the things we didn't do, the choices we made. The body's voice doesn't really yell. The body's voice, when it yells, is this pain, and this pain gets worse, and this pain gets worse, till finally you can't stand up. And that's the body saying, you know, you need to do something. So it's coming from a very different standpoint. And I always say the feet. The feet are everything. If you can get your feet grounded on the earth, then you're in your body and you're connected. And this is our vehicle for living this life, is being in the human body and walking on the earth. If you can get your feet grounded, everything comes back into place.
And the feet are, I guess, and you'll explain to me what branch of your science and your knowledge speaks to this, but the feet are a representation of the different parts of the body, as I guess to a palm reader, the same thing. The palm is a representation of the body. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, there's actually reflexology for the hands and the feet, where you can access everything in the body from the hands or feet. I prefer the feet. This is kind of an area I'm drawn to. So you can actually work with, you know, activating. It's also a way to work on the body if you're very ill or something is in a lot of pain, sometimes it's very uncomfortable to work on that area. If you can access it from somewhere else and get things to open up and move, you're getting the same effect, but it's a little more pleasant.
Yeah, makes sense.
But also for me, the feet speak to me. I mean, I do have something of a background in reflexology, but that's kind of my base point. When the first time I have a client and I really don't know too much other than what they may have told me before they got on the table, I'm either going to start at the chest, stomach area, just putting my hand there to see, or the feet. As I make adjustments to the body, and by adjustments, it's putting acupressure, moving this, to get the energy moving. I'll go back to the feet. I'll keep checking, go back to the feet. Okay, what's open, what's not open? Okay, I have to go back to this area. There's a word I'm looking for, and I can't think of what it is that they're
So the feet will reflect
what's going on in the body.
In the entire body.
From the feet, I can see inside my head where the blockages are. Like, okay, it's still a little stuck in the chest, and I'll go up and I'll open the chest, and I'll come back down and say, okay, that opened, but that layer moved. Okay, then we have this layer I have to go to, and I'll work a little there.
And I guess feet are the part of our body that's take the most pressure, take the most pounding, are in contact with something other than our own bodies more than any other part of the body. I mean, our hands are pretty much, waving in the breeze, but our feet are always right there in contact with the world around them. 2 minutes, okay. Let's wrap up this discussion. We're going to come back and have another show because this is just going so interesting. But let's wrap up with talking about the feet and where the feet, on a person's feet. If this is my foot, are there specific spots on my great toe, on my other toes, that relate to any particular part of the body? What would they be?
Well, your knowledge is probably a little bit better than this area than mine.
So if this were the inside of the foot, then
right, because here's your wait a second, here, this would be the inside,
right,
because this is the great toe.
Okay.
Okay.
So the big toe would, all along in here would be the sinuses. I think the toes are kind of like the head and different head points.
Yeah.
And then you'd have the spine going up in here.
Is the inside of the foot.
Is the inside of the foot. And see, in Shasta it's a little different. You have kidneys in the center, you have a heart over here, then you have...
so that's actually solar plexus too, kidney and solar plexus. In reflexology they call kidney 1 solar plexus, and Chinese medicine it's kidney 1. So a lot of the points overlay.
Yeah. So there's a simpatico between shiatsu and...
well, in acupuncture it's very different. You have different organs go with different toes. So you're actually, like the big toe would be spleen and then liver, and then you'd have stomach, and then you'd have gallbladder, and you'd have bladder. And the thing about the ending points, you have waterways, so you have the Jingwell points, it's which are where things come in and go out, and as you go in deeper into the body, it's moved in. Okay. We're going to have to leave it at that because we all run out of soup or coffee or whatever we happen to be imbibing here at the table. But we'll come back and we'll do another show. I'm David Stevenson. We've had Judy Vuozo and Patricia Singer with us today and had a great discussion about alternative medicine and its interaction with traditional Western medicine. And this has been Progressive Soup. Thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. I'll be tonight's host. With us tonight we have Judy Vuozo and Patricia Singer. Judy is a licensed massage therapist amongst her many skills. Patricia is a acupuncturist amongst her many skills. We're going to talk about Eastern medicine, how it relates to Western medicine, a little bit of background, and just a fun conversation. So first of all, either one of you first, tell our audience what you do, what your background is, who you are, where you came from, how you got to where you are now.
Who's going first?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, this is probably my third or fourth career, I would say. I trained massage therapy at the Swedish Institute Manhattan. I've been doing energy work for 20 plus years. Was doing it before. I actually went to massage school because when I would be working with people with energy work, with Reiki, I'd be able to say, well, there's something not quite right here or there, but I didn't know enough about anatomy to really say, okay, this is what's going on here, and all that entails, like this organ's not working right and what that means. And when I went to school, I really fell in love with massage. So I really blended my love for energy work with massage, and it's so important to know the anatomy, to have more than just, it gives you another level when you're working with someone, even with just energy work, it's more tools in your toolbox.
That's one of the things I'm going to ask you about, because I didn't understand how in-depth your knowledge of anatomy compares to that of a medical doctor, for instance. But first of all, Patricia, tell us who you are, where you came from, and how you got where you are now.
Well, my road started over 30 years ago. Actually, it'll be 30 years January 9th that I started studying shiatsu, which is acupressure massage. And then from there I wanted to know more, just like you, with the anatomy, so I went to the Connecticut Center for Massage Therapy and became a massage therapist. And then the road I studied healing with Barbara Brennan, and I went on to study Native American studies, and then continued on until finally I landed into acupuncture school, and I also went to the Swedish Institute and studied classical acupuncture.
Where did your roads converge?